It's hard to imagine this now, but a former royal, yes, that's right, a senior royal in the shape of the Duke of Edinburgh, His Royal Highness Prince Philip, way back in December 1951, was almost embroiled in a Sinatra-style, shall we say, misdemeanor while in London. As ever, let me explain. Morning, lovely to see you, and as ever, thank you so much for your time today. We'll have a quick wave, yes. You're right. I'm not bad, thanks. Yeah. Oh, well, not bad, we're battling on, aren't we? I think that's the phrase, isn't it? When you meet people and say, how are you doing? Not so bad. And you think, what does that mean? You daren't ask. I know, well, yes, you see, you get all the ailments, don't you? Well, you get mine if you ask. Well, of course, yes. I mean, we've all got them, haven't we? I'm a slave to Germaline, yes. Should get the right fitting shoes, shouldn't you? Listen to what your mum tells you, you know what I'm saying? Oh dear, no, let's not go down that route. No, let's not have Shoegate. Back as ever to your royal story of the day. Now this really did make me smile, and it all comes really courtesy of being lucky enough to meet the brilliant actor, raconteur, and of course Hollywood legend, Tony Curtis. Now, Tony Curtis, as you know, for many people, I met him a number of times when he came over to London, and we would often just get together and he would just tell you stories, and they were fascinating stories about the people that he'd met, the high rollers of the day, Henry Wilson, the infamous agent to the stars, yes, for Universal Studios, all that sort of stuff. And you would learn so much about the other side of Hollywood. I think I've mentioned this before. When stars get to a certain age, particularly of the golden era, they're very keen to make sure their version of events gets out, not the tainted version, I might say, of course, a studio or something like that. And Tony was simply no different. A kid, of course, from Hell's Kitchen, the Bronx, wherever, and talked about how tough it was. So he couldn't quite believe his luck. In December 1951, meeting, as he pointed out, real life royalty in the shape, yes, I mean, when you think about it now, of Princess Elizabeth and of course the Prince Philip, His Royal Highness Prince Philip. And what was nice about this, as he said, they were so down to earth, so fun-loving, carefree and beautiful. He said, they were really magnetic at this particular event. The event was a midnight matinee at the Frank Matcham designed theatre, the London Coliseum. Massive theatre, still going strong today, part of the English National Opera for the time being anyway, at least. And the reason why it was a midnight matinee was simply because all the stars that they wanted to book for, of course, Prince Philip's charity, well, they were all in shows, so it had to stop, so they literally went on after the show. You imagine doing that in today's world? I don't think people would do that, There was a lot of midnight matinees back then. Now, according to Tony, there was a bit of an infamous thing. You see, the whole setup was the fact that there were going to be major British stars alongside a sprinkling of Hollywood names, including, as I say, himself, Tony, alongside his beautiful wife, Janet Leigh, and the delicious-looking Rhonda Fleming, a particular favourite, apparently, of Prince Philip. They got on incredibly well. Yes, it didn't go unnoticed, apparently, by Her Majesty the Queen, or as she was then, Princess Elizabeth. But, all good fun, naturally. Now, what actually happened was, the reason why Frank was over here alongside the beautiful Ava Gardner was, literally, she was doing some filming work, and he came over. He wasn't doing particularly well at this point. He wasn't the Sinatra that we know today. He wasn't the big name, that sort of thing. So he was thrilled to get the invite. But according to Tony, one of the things was that he recorded a track specifically and gave all the royalties in his time up, which not a lot of people know about, for the Prince's Playground Fund. This was all to develop new playgrounds after the war for children in schools. A lot of things go unnoticed, and particularly all thanks to Mr. Sinatra for doing that. We know he loved Great Britain, made an album about it. But what was fascinating was this, that they were staying, Ava and Frank, at the Washington Hotel in the very heart of Mayfair. And miraculously, Ava's jewels, while they were out having afternoon tea somewhere, got stolen. This made a big press. And the bottom line with this was, you see, that, it was all literally linked to royal event, jewels go missing, that you can imagine what it was like in the tabloid days. What really developed, according to Tony, was this, that Frank was very tight on money. And to this day, Tony told me he was never really sure if the jewels were actually stolen, or indeed whether Frank had come up with yet another scam to make sure he could get some insurance money. Let's not forget he wasn't working too much then, the Bobby Soxer era had gone over, and as Tony pointed out, Frank was a lovely guy, but he was very, very inventive, to say the least. On the night of the event, it was a spectacular night, all thanks to the request from Prince Philip. Ava Gardner and Frank Sinatra took to the stage to do a duet. Yes, right, absolutely. And they'd never done this before in public, but it was something that they wanted to do. Frank felt this was the right thing because it was in front of British royalty, and it brought the house down, knocking the top of the bill literally off the top of the bill. Of course, afterwards, there was chit-chat and everything, and Tony told me that, Prince Philip and the Queen said, Princess Elizabeth said, I'm surprised you two don't make a record together, do something like that. Apparently it was something, when I met Ava Gardner years later, that she would have been keen on. But as she said, according to Frank, there could only be one singer in the family, and that was none other than Frank Sinatra. Egos at play. But on that very special night, as I say, Frank Sinatra was consoled by Prince Philip about the break-in at the Washington Hotel. And he said, oh, don't worry, the jewels are 10 a penny. And apparently Prince Philip turned to Princess Elizabeth and said, well, I wouldn't necessarily say that with the crown jewels and the royal family jewels, but I get the picture, or something of that phraseology. Fascinating to note what goes on behind the scenes, and they kept in touch for many years, Frank Sinatra and the Queen, who then became the Queen, and of course the Duke of Edinburgh. Particular favourite of Princess Margaret, and as Tony Curtis said, many years later he was lucky enough to meet the Queen again, and she remembered that night, he said, with such affection. I wonder whether she remembers, though, the missing jewels at the Washington Hotel. Neil Sean in the very heart of London.